Hello and welcome. Today I am joined by Chris Bartlett, who is Group Transformation Director at Response Physio and also Managing Director at Edicia. Chris, how are you doing?
Very good, Andy. Yeah, very good indeed. Thanks very much for the invite. Looking forward to our conversation.
Hey, no problem. No, I am actually really looking forward to chatting to you about it. I know you got a very interesting story. We've spoken before on some of this stuff. And so talk to me about like the two roles that I mentioned there and how you ended up doing the group transformation. Sounds an interesting title. So how did that come about?
I suppose having spent sort of 20 years in the MSK space in the UK, I think you learn an aspect of what does work and what doesn't work. And I don't know how much you know about Response, but Response is a growing physiotherapy company based out of Nottingham. Got around 15 to 16 clinics, predominantly in David Lloyd, locations across the UK, occupational health, primary care, physio clinics, the standard sort of physio model. And I suppose what they're looking at as an organisation is what most physio companies sit themselves in, is that they are a traditional bricks and mortar, face-to-face, hands-on physio company. And my background has been, certainly in the last 5 years, if not 10 years, been quite focused on that sort of digital hybrid model around physio. So previous role, I was CEO for Champion Health Plus, part of Physitrack Group. We went through an acquisition with Physitrack, and within that sort of environment, I learned what works with hybrid, what works with digital, and always been a huge advocate for that sort of digital model within the physio sector. So having had those conversations with Matt and Martin, the founding directors of Response, it was about, well, how do we bring in all of those components? And I recently left Champion at that point at the end of February this year, 2025. And just with what they were trying to do with their bringing that digital play in, getting a little bit more efficient with how they look at their model of delivery. I felt it was a good fit. So I came in initially as a consultant, having only set up a consultancy brand 3 days before, which is what I refer to as Edicia there in your intro, Andy. And so that's how it all pieces together. So yeah, I now assist Response across their sport and leisure, their clinic channel, their occupational services channel as well, to look at transformation mainly from a digital component, like how do we bring in the sophisticatedness of portals and AI physio, all of those sort of aspects that are starting to come into the industry. So it's a very fast evolving component of the sector that we work in, and something I've really enjoyed over the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's really interesting then. So where do you see that? Like I was chatting to a guy who's got an online business and he's supporting with ACL rehab, and he's built a growing business in that piece. Where do you see that combination of digital and the physical bits being currently and then going?
I think what we, just to sort of rewind a little bit, when we were so I previously worked for Slater Gordon, Overland Health, what, 10 years ago, if we backtrack that far. And within that, we were delivering telephonic triage and also digital based triage. So we were one of the first companies to implement that. We won a lot of innovation awards around that I was involved with back then, and it's just generally evolved over a period of time. So as technology is enhanced, and I think we're in such an interesting period now, this next 3 to 5 years, with the acceleration that we're seeing in how AI is impacting pretty much everything we do, from recording meetings to delivering services. We're in a really exciting phase, and I thought, actually, as being an advocate for that digital play, that COVID was certainly accelerated that. So what I was surprised by is the return that we have seen back into that face-to-face model. So at the start of COVID, we were the company that I was in at the time was a company called Rehab Plus. we were there delivering, again, bricks and mortar based traditional physio, but a bit of AI, a bit of online physiotherapy. But when COVID hit, and I can remember it well because I don't think I lost most of my hair during that period, that month period when COVID hit, and we had to close down the 10 or 12 clinics that we had, but transition and pivot very quickly to digital physio. We were well placed for that because we've been delivering it for so long, sort of 3-4 years. Nobody knew an awful lot of what to do and how to do it. So I don't think I've ever been busier during that period. But we delivered, I think it's something in the region of about 1.2 million minutes of virtual physio in the first 6 months. So we went really hard and really aggressive with that, and that's obviously what's put us onto the radar of PhysiTrack at that point. So I suppose what COVID did was give everybody that exposure to it. And then what people sort of have done over the last 3 or 4 years is start to gravitate back to that security of the face-to-face. Traditional, it's referred to as physical therapy, certainly if you're in American. So it's physical by nature. And I think that is where societally people see it. But where this AI wave is coming through, you see great stuff out there in the market now that is coming through from America, and actually some aspects of happening. Probably the friend that you referred to, who sort of works in the sort of the Scotland region, that's doing some AI physio type stuff within the NHS. It's starting to get its gravitas back, and it's getting trusted. It's getting recognised that it plays a part as this enhances. So over the next 12 to 18 months, as the AI aspects of these enhance, when we're working on some pretty exciting stuff around digital triage and sort of looking at data from the thousands of patients that we've seen to then look at preventative measures and all of those sort of bits, I think we're in for a hell of a ride in the next few years in that space, and hopefully, I'd like to be at the forefront of that. I don't quite know how yet, and in what capacity, but it has always been a big interest of mine, that digital, how digital comes in. Me personally, my belief is that it's not. I don't think for the next 10 years we'll see everybody in a face-to-face camp, and I don't think we'll see everybody in a digital camp. I think hybrid, certainly for this next 5 to 10 years, is the place that I feel that people feel so comfortable in the UK market. We've got a different market to the US. Our geography helps us with a hybrid model because you can switch between being in a clinic one week and being remote the next, but having the value and benefits of both with that flexibility of not having to go to appointments or being able to check in with your physio when you need it. So for me, I think the horse I'm backing is the one that sits in the hybrid camp at the minute, and getting the best of both. But there are organisations out there that are going heavy on digital. Fair play to them. But me personally, I think there is still that mix of both, certainly in the UK.
So what made you in your before COVID then? Why do you started that digital piece? Like what made you? Because to be able to go and do 1.2 million, which is incredible, you're obviously very well schooled. You knew what you were doing with it. So why did you start doing that?
Well, when I was back at Overland, we were long before COVID. We were looking at ways in which we could, I suppose, with volume, route people into the right place at the right time at speed. That was the sort of the intention of that triaging process. I think we were delivering in the region of about 75,000 claimant referrals a year. It was about a way of processing things into the right place at the right time, with accuracy and speed, and that's why those sort of tools help. When we moved into that next phase, we were just doing the right thing at the right time. If I'm honest, Andy, it was a bit of luck. We had been doing it, we'd been trying it. We were doing probably 500 or 600 referrals a quarter, let's say. So quite small volume in that space. But what we had was all of the infrastructure. We had the relationships with the likes of Physitrack to be able to do the remote exercise prescription. We had the systems within like Jane app. We were using Jane app at the point at Rehab Plus, so we were able to do online consultations, and it just evolved quickly. It was a quick learning period and probably taking some risks with it, but inevitably when your back is up against the fence and you've not got many options, you take risks, and fortunately for us they paid off.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think you've probably been a little bit humble when you're saying we were lucky with it, because I'm sure you were lucky, but then the fact you were looking at that stuff, I
Yeah,
think we were similar. Like we were using Zoom at the time or whatever, and
yeah,
that is lucky in one sense, but you would obviously could see
yeah.
it
We
was going
probably
that way at some point.
Yeah, we probably took it further, and it comes back to um, early part of my career. I was a case manager, so I was working in the case management industry. I've spent several years on the board of CMS UK in my time, and I suppose it was looking at in the case management sector. They use that sort of remote assessment quite frequently. Um, Even back 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't unusual that we were doing telephonic calls an assessment. Um, so I suppose it's just that natural evolution. I've always had a huge interest in tech and how that can play. Personally, I've built websites for, I think, since I've been about 15 years old, if not younger. So always had an interest in tech and how that plays out. And I've always tried to keep myself ahead of what is potentially happening, albeit um, I've sat in multiple businesses now, and it's always been quite a creative piece around developing services or new services that can have and stand on their own legs. So I've done pretty well with that over the years. Again, trying to be humble within that. There's several service lines that have taken well over six-figure revenues off of stuff that I've created. So Champion, that was a good success as well with post acquisition with Physitrack. We got that to 43 clinics, for example, and a national service with some fantastic clients in there. I won't share them for sake of confidentiality, but there was some good, really good household names in there in the retail space, in the automotive space, and stuff like that. So it was, yeah, I think for me, luck does play a part, but I am a fine believer that you also make your own luck. If you're doing enough things and you expose yourself into enough environments that you can make mistakes, and you can learn from those mistakes quickly, then actually something's gonna hopefully stick at some point. And that's certainly what's happened for me in that sort of hybrid digital space. So the three pillars that I created when I set up the consultancy with Edicia was innovation, healthcare, and technology. So those are my sort of three core pillars and my sort of core beliefs as well. That with integrity is pretty much what I sort of operate on as my moral compass within the sector, and it's worked well for me so far. So I don't think the next 20 years will be any different.
Yeah, no, that sounds really good. So I'd like to go back to like where those things have come from for you, because it's this is your background is very different to anyone I've really chatted to. So yeah, so how did you get into this space in the first place?
How what into the actual rehab space?
Just purely like, so you're at school or whatever, like
Yeah,
what
yeah.
made you want to
So
go down this pathway?
yeah, so right, the quickest story to this was that I'd always had a good interest in sport, played sport at a good level, and I suppose at that when I was looking at my sort of qualifications and stuff like that, with a bit of a backstory, my parents originally, I come from Bristol originally. I can't hold that against me. I've lost the accent over the last 20 years. lived away longer than I've actually stayed there. But I suppose to give you a bit of my beginning, as it were, my mother was a hairdresser. My dad was an ex-army HGV driver. He was actually a driver for Birdseye, hauling fish fingers around the UK. And but life sort of throws us a curveball every now and again. And at that point, I was about 18 months old, so we are really going back nearly 40 years. But he had an epileptic seizure whilst driving this vehicle and lost his license. So what happened on the back of a sort of an 18-month period, he went through fairly extensive treatment, sort of brain operations, all sorts of things in that. And I suppose they were thrown into a position where he couldn't drive anymore. They had to just do something. And they went and bought a pet store. Knew nothing about the industry, knew nothing about what it was, but took a punt, and they set this up. Done very well out of it. It was over a sort of a 10-year period, developed it into a good, a very strong business. They were one of the first wholesale. Basically, instead of bagging everything up, they put it to wholesale, sold wholesale, and then sold to one of the household names that you probably would go to if you've got pets nowadays. Again, keeping confidentiality in there, but so they did well with that, and I suppose I've always had that sort of entrepreneurial piece built within me right from an early age, and I suppose the piece that I take from that is that. I've always had a real interest in business, how it operates, how it functions. I then, when I went to sort of a bit later on, when I was looking at my university options, I was in construction, did sort of construction bag at that point, and got involved in quite a serious accident. And as a part of that, I took a point of reflection to go, well, actually, I don't want to go down that construction route that I was on the path of. And I couldn't do physio, ironically, because I'd taken all the wrong A levels. So I did sports rehab because it was slightly easier back then to get into. And took me to Middlesex Uni to start with the sports rehab degree. Did that. Come out of sports rehab in the first 200 or 300 graduates. If you look at my registration number, I couldn't get a job. Nobody wanted a non-HCPC registered sports rehabber back then. How the world has changed in that process in that 20 years. But I went to Australia to get a bit of experience. That experience in Australia was fantastic for me. I worked in for a club, an AFL club, Aussie Rules. Still proud to this day. I will just still have the signed shirt from 2006 on my wall for a club called West Coast Eagles. Make sure the webcam's actually back on me. And that got me into the professional sport. Worked out there for about a year, then worked in golf injuries for Titleist. Then come back to the UK because I got a bit homesick. Worked for Tottenham for about a year or so, and then realised that actually the professional sport was not quite for me. And then that's what pushed me down the sort of the occupational health route, and then worked for Rehab Works, as they were at the time now, Vita. Had various roles with them, and they were a great business for me at that stage of my career. Give me good opportunities, give me the opportunity to go into different sectors. Like I said, just before that, actually, so I did work for a case management company in Basingstoke for 4 or 5 years as well, and got a really good foundation of using that skill set and knowledge to help people, and all the way through, I've always delivered some element of digital or technology at some point because of the interest that I've had with it. So yeah, that's the longer expanded version of how I've got to where I am. And I think a lot of it is actually how it's been ingrained in me from pretty much day one. I suppose. Some people will observe that I was obviously born with a cleft. And I suppose things have always had their challenges with that. But what it has done for me as I've certainly got older in my career is that I've become a lot more recognizable a lot quicker. So it's actually a superpower for me now, and I do support the cleft side of things quite a lot as well for that reason, because it's yeah, it's had its highs and its lows in there as I've gone through.
Yeah, no, you mentioned sort of three things there. The life bit being with the cleft, and then in terms of sports rehab, not being able to get a job, and then like your parents' things. So all three of those, like you look at it and think, God, this is bloody hard. But then it's made you like, how has that? Do you think it's all three of those, or is it coincidence that all it's made you really innovative with what you've done?
That's a fantastic question. And I don't actually I don't know whether I've got a straight answer to that. I think what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Is definitely what I've learned. And again, one thing that I didn't add there is about 3 or 4 years ago, I had a fairly significant health piece where they found a tumor between my brain, my facial nerve, and my eardrum. So not great options to be presented with. You either lose your hearing, you either potentially have a stroke if we remove it, or you have stroke-like symptoms because we hit your facial nerve. Not great three options when you've got a 2-year-old kid and various other bits in there at that point. And I suppose what I've come out of that, obviously losing quite a lot of hearing, but generally I get on with the day to day. So I think what I've learned is that life throws you shit. Pardon my handedness there, and it's how you react to it. And you had a guy on your podcast several weeks back that I admire immensely, in Matt Taylor at Sano, and who at the time was going through a fairly similar circumstance. And I remember fondly of that time when Matt and I would sit down, get together. He lives in Leeds, I live in Lincoln, and I would drive to him because he couldn't drive, and look back on that time and go, well, actually, if it wasn't for people in the industry, things could have been very, very different. We were having good conversations, and yeah, it was. But what it has done is made me a better leader. I think it's made me a better person generally. It's made me a better dad, I think, because I'm a proud father of 2 kids. One's 4, 5 next week, and one's 10. And all of those things that haven't killed me have definitely, I suppose, hardened the shell with that. So
So,
yeah.
like when you say that they've made you a better leader, how do you quantify that, or what makes you say that?
I think you're just better at understanding that people go through different periods, and there's a up and down in everybody's life. They'll have good times, they'll have bad times, and I think it's actually what your organization or what your leaders and your managers show when things are up against it and they're not running as smooth as you would like. And it's about how you react to that. So I think I've just got a lot more understanding of that, having had exposures or difficult circumstances, how I would react to that if someone was coming to me with the same thing. And I have subsequently had people that have come to me with, since I've had my own, like we had my old role, an individual that had diagnosis of cancer and stuff like that. And I suppose it just enables you to just process that in a slightly different way, being more mindful, being more respectful of that, because you can all elements of it you can relate to. You can never relate to everything that someone else is going through, but just being able to say, I hear you, I understand, I've been in similar circumstances, not the same, but similar. And I think that just gives a level of compassion that I think people look for when they're looking at their leadership, let's say, within an organization. And it's not always like that. I've been in some organizations that are as far from that as you can possibly get. So it's just a way that I carry myself, and I would like to think that there are people out there that have worked for me, either worked with me or worked underneath me, that would say, actually, yeah, he's helped me, or he's moved me on to the next level. And that's what's quite important for me as well, is moving people forward, not stifling their growth. At some point they're going to move on, but the key aspect for me that anyone works with me is, have I progressed them on to the next bit, that they've got the opportunity to move on to the next role, but they never have the need or wish to, because they're happy with where they are. So that's been a big thing for me, and it's worked well. Our retention of staff in the past where I've led has been good, very good indeed. Again, probably being a bit modest there, but it's we've kept the same team for years that have worked around. We've just built on it. So I feel that there's something there that's guided me from all of my life experiences that enable me to effectively do that.
Yeah, no, so you've kept the same team around. Sometimes that can be, you could look at it and say, right, well, are we progressing with that? So how do you, to keep them motivated, to keep them moving forward, how do you balance that bit of wanting to keep them on side? I'm a people pleaser. I know that I am, and sometimes it's difficult to have those conversations because you don't want to upset people, you're scared or whatever it is, in terms of pissing them off or whatever. So what's your philosophy on how you're working with your team to make sure that you're challenging them enough and progressing them whilst also being that supportive role on it?
Yeah, I think I would say that I'm not a soft leader, but I'm quite what's the word? I'm not a Steve Jobs, put it that way. I'm not, even though I sort of admire him on many fronts, that's not one aspect of man management that I admire from him, or perceive to from what I've heard. I suppose my approach is relatively warm, relatively trusting of this of people. I like hard work, but I don't take the piss in the process. So I think it's such a balance between all of those things, isn't it? It's about making sure that you're not micromanaging, you're giving people the freedom to to move and develop within their role, but you're giving them the tools to do the job effectively, and that does evolve over time. So I think we've got quite a good balance of that, and I think I've seen that within the 3 or 4 months that I've been with Response as an organisation, is that they share a lot of those principles. They share a lot of those core values and core beliefs that if you sit well within that framework, inevitably things grow well and grow quickly because everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction.
Yeah, you mentioned that you'd set up your company, and then 3 days later, you're in this big role like that. So, what was your plan when you done your sale and you're out of that? Like, what was the plan?
The plan. And so the plan was, what was the plan? I think the plan was, I suppose, setting up Edicia to be. I knew that I'd built up over 20 years the experience that I needed to provide support, guidance, and stuff like that for other organisations. There's a close friend of mine that lives literally 3 doors down from me that owns a coaching business, and I've been asked a couple of times to present at some of his coaching sessions, and see with my background experience, similar sort of thing to this, and also play a bit of a Dragon's Den type individual with people that were coming in with trying to learn their pitches for coaching and presenting, and I just got really interested in that sort of next step on what does coaching look like, or what does being able to go into an organization and provide executive sort of guidance and support to organizations that want to either improve their outcomes, want to improve their technology position with their services, or want to grow their business, want to sell their business. All of those sort of things were areas that I felt I could add value. And I toyed with the sort of consultancy route a few times, and it's never worked out. One primarily because of family commitment. A young family didn't necessarily give me the freedom to be able to really try and push for going out alone. But other bits were wanting to make an impact, and I think I work at my best when I'm going into an organization and saying, well, actually your organization wants to get here, how do we get there and how do we implement it? And that's where my skill set is really strong, is looking at that that how we're going to deliver on it, how we're going to implement it, quite strategic in vision as well, and how we can get technology in. So that's why I set up Edicia. I set it up on the 1st of March this year, having left track on the 28th of February. So it was very, very, very close to that. And then yeah, 3rd of March, land a 4-day-a-week role with response, which has actually progressed on past that as well now. So yeah, it's we are where we are. But what's my vision? Who knows what things are around the corner, what exciting opportunities we'll get. We're working on some fabulous things at the minute around how we can implement technology into our service lines, how we deliver a little bit more innovatively. So I'm hoping this next 3-month period will be quite exciting for what we can take into market and expand on what others are doing in that space. So whilst still continuing to deliver some good in-clinic face-to-face physio.
Yeah, it's interesting. The way you talk, you're very positive and optimistic and it's opportunity driven. And some of the things, so I'm in the market a lot, speaking to various different people, and I'm definitely an optimist. I'm really optimistic, genuinely, I think as well. But maybe I always think it's genuine. I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to know, isn't it? I think it's genuine. I'm sure it is. But then you see a lot of negativity. Q1 for us was quite slow. Q2 very good, and it's a very interesting time, I think, particularly in the healthcare, because there's a lot of smaller businesses that it's more of a B2C type model for us sometimes because you're dealing directly with the owner. But like, where do you see where does your optimism come from? Is one question, and then like, where do you see the economy from that healthcare perspective and where it can go?
Is it optimism or is it just, I suppose, the wish that at some point we'll get it right? I don't know. Probably a bit of both there, isn't it? I am genuinely quite optimistic as an individual. I think I probably see the positive in most things and most people, probably at the detriment of my own failures sometimes, but you learn from that. But what I think, to answer your question quite directly, I think my optimism comes from the fact that we do good stuff generally as an industry. We're there to make an impact. I've gone into the industry and the career because we want to help people. We want to improve people's health, well-being, and all of those sort of things. And if we're not doing that, then we're not doing our job. So a lot of the North Star that I take is things like NPS, like the Net Promoter Score, and making sure that we're driving that in the right way from a customer experience perspective. We're looking at the clinical outcomes and we're constantly improving. I've been if you've ever seen me on a podcast or a thing before, I'm a fine believer of the Kaizen. Well, I don't know how they pronounce it, but Kaizen principle, which is that 1% incremental gain over a period of time, will get you where you want to be. I'm probably ruining that and what it actually means, but that's how I interpret it.
Was it Toyota? Which was it?
Yeah, it's used in one of the car manufacturers. Yeah, you're right. But it's a principle for me that if we don't change everything all at once and we don't try and change the world all at once, and there will be organizations out there that do it, but it doesn't always work like that. But for me, it's that are we better today than what we were yesterday? And if we are, then we're moving in the right direction over a period of time. And that's again the quite a core philosophy of mine is making sure that we're always improving, whether it be in our Net Promoter Score, whether it will be in our average number of sessions, whether it's our clinic facilities, whatever it is it our technology implementation? So are we better today than what we were yesterday? Are we better this week than what we were last week? Are we better this year than what we were last year? And if we can't say no to that, then well, bloody hell are we trying? So I think for me that is that's done me well. done me well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that is good. I think it's because it is sometimes it is be, although I'm an optimist, you can also have negative reflections. And I was in a session this morning with someone who helps me from a coaching perspective, and it was just like, right, what have you done in the last year? And I reflected on some pretty big things that we've done. And it's like straight with even within me, I'm like, God, actually kind of just feel myself kind of relaxing a little bit and thinking, shit, yeah, we've done some amazing things in that time. And I know it, but you
Yeah.
don't always stop and do it because you're always pushing, right, what's next? What's next? How do you do it? And that piece of actually looking at that is a really helpful bit to do.
Yeah, the other bit I do in some of the coaching bits that I do is I talk to people about sort of reflection diaries and stuff like that. It can be a little bit fluffy, but actually I think we um, one of the things that a story that always resonates with me is that I think it was it may have been on the Dent consultancy podcast, I can't, Daniel or something. Um,
Priestley.
Priestley, that's the chap, and he says about that he's on a walking trip or a mountain trip, and he goes up onto this mountain and he gets to the peak and he's speaking to his guide. Oh, that's fantastic achievement, da da da. And he's like, he looks out into the horizon and he sees a bigger mountain. And with that, he goes, well, what's that mountain? I want to climb that one. And the guide to him turns around and says, Daniel, um, you need to recognize the mountain that you're on before you challenge that one. So again, something like that. And again, that we've built, or the team have built some bits. And if you don't sit there sometimes and just reflect on what you have got and what you stood in or stood on, um, you often get distracted by what is out there and what your next target is, and I definitely felt that in my previous role because it ended up being a public listed company as a group, and I can't say that that was something that I particularly enjoyed because it was so um, uh, quarterly driven. Like you're here, but now you need to be there, and next quarter you need to be there. Whereas in the private equity play that I've been involved in, that's been a much longer game, and whether that just fits to my skill set, I'm not sure. But I suppose having those exposures to those different markets has led me to go, well, I wouldn't want to go back there again, or I want to focus on this, or I want to do this, because it plays out to my strengths as an individual. But yeah, the one around sort of just recognizing where you are and reflecting on what you've achieved is good. And I think a podcast like this or a conversation like this, yeah, it's not been too bad. I'm still alive.
Yeah.
That's the bonus. And I suppose again, that's I'm often people when I get onto a call that I've not spoken to them before for quite a while. They'll go like, traditionally, how you doing? Like, how are you? So, still alive. That's for me a good one. And everything apart on top of that is a bonus. But I think with work, I do have an element of optimism with it. I do enjoy what I do. I love. I really enjoy the sector that I'm in. I really enjoy the impact that we can make. Um, but what I'm really excited about is the next chapter is how we can take that to the next level. And I think there is a reticence in a lot of physios about what technology does and how what AI can do and what its disruption is going to be. And there's generally not um, a strong belief that it's going to provide a particular lot of benefit. People were very against it in that COVID period that digital doesn't give outcomes, and to be honest, we dismissed all of those sort of. We were getting better outcomes and better feedback from our digital therapy than we were in our in clinic at some points in that period. Just because the technology was good and the processes were good and it was efficient and all of that sort of thing. And I think if you get it right, this mix between the two is going to be an exciting development for the industry.
Yeah, definitely. We kind of skirted over before, like you with the the merge or the sale, however you want to describe that one. So yeah, talk me through that process because it's a massive, massive achievement, and I don't know how much you can share in terms of what that was like. And I know there's sums of money involved in it and things, but I think it's a really interesting. I find this stuff fascinating because I've never gone through a process like that. So like, how can you try to sum that up for me in
Well,
a good way?
uh, so the I remember it quite fondly because it was the end of that COVID year, and bear in mind we were working incredibly hard in periods of that year, in sort of 2020. So from March and when the lockdown started hitting, and all of those sort of things. So it was an incredibly busy year, and I can remember saying to Richard and Stephen, who were the other directors and owners in the business, I'm going to take a proper Christmas break. And I'm going to have a couple of weeks off over that Christmas period just to unwind with the family in a really tough year. And I got a call Christmas Eve from um, the main owner of Physitrack, and I'd known him for several years, having used the Physitrack as a product. And I had a good conversation with him, and the timing was a little bit off, but hey ho. And I remember going, that's got interest. I'll share it with Stephen. And to be honest, I didn't get that rest over that Christmas break that I was expecting. And so we were like, no, don't want to do. We won't go with that now. We've got a journey. We've got a plan. We've got a 2-3 year exit plan. That sort of stuff that we'd spoken about because it was going well at that point. And cut a long story short, he we were everything aligned, let's say, with where it was, and it was a fairly quick period of due diligence and acquisition. We ended up completed on February the 28th, so a very quick period, and the reason for that was at the time we didn't know until about a week before the transaction, but the company as a group would be publicly listed on the Nasdaq, and that was going to happen in June. And if this didn't happen, then it wasn't going to come off. So we knew that about a week out from it, and I won't share the actual individual aspects of the commercials in that, but they're in public domain. But the acquisition went through, and then went straight from acquisition into 3 months of preparing for. At that time, I was then made CEO for the company, and Rehab Plus, as it was at that point, was the second biggest entity in the group. So there was aspects of my time then involved in what do we need to do to prepare for public listing, and that was nothing I'd ever. So I'd gone on sort of the periphery of acquisitions in the past in previous roles, but never was the primary lead in the acquisition. So I had all of that stress, let's say, involved in that. And then to go from that straight into 3 months of stress around trying to prepare things, not necessarily directly influencing in that, but again, a lot of paperwork, a lot of information when you're going through a public listing. And then it just accelerated very, very quickly off the back of that. Over the last, like I said, it moved from 12, 13 clinics, I think it was, at acquisition to 43 at its height. We developed a national service that was adopting physiotherapy partner clinics around the UK, and yeah, grew really well. And then we acquired a company called Champion Health, which was a SaaS platform inside the group, and then we changed our brand to align with that. And then it had a bit more of a direction around commercial and corporate space. We designed one thing that I'm really proud of in that role is a digital triaging persona that we created called Nexa, which was a sort of a pathway management tool that was sort of a not true AI like it can be now, but it's got AI principles to it and how it sort of communicates. We designed that, and that's sort of been brought up and pushed out to clients in my departure. It's nice to see that coming through with and what I'm doing is pretty much the same now, just in a different landscape, different environment, and with a lot more learnings that have gone on, what works, what doesn't, change a few things of how I would do it than what was done there. But generally, I think that acquisition period is not one that you'd want to do every week. Is what I would say. I've got a lot of respect for the people out in the industry that seem to be like buying a company every other couple of weeks. It's I've got a lot of admiration for them. But you learn a lot in those periods. You learn sometimes what you learn more from what you've got wrong than what you've actually got right. And if I do that again, and I'm sure at some point I will, either be directly or indirectly involved in stuff like that. There's stuff that I've learned in that process that I would do differently.
Any, not that I've gone through it, or maybe will in the future, anything that you think would be worth sharing that you would learn?
Make sure you've got a good lawyer. And a good tight agreement.
Right.
And that's not to say that I think there were some aspects that I think it's always making sure that you've got something to reference, and there's no ambiguity and stuff like that. I've spoken to many founders and many individuals that have gone through that acquisition process that say there's always something that comes unstuck in that period. Generally, it was good for us. There wasn't really many challenges with that, but I think just making sure that you've got your eyes dotted and your T's crossed with a good, strong agreement is what I would do. And to be honest, I hope they're not going to see this, but I did a 4-year period. That's not something I would do again, because landscape changes. So for me personally, I think it would be 2-year max.
Yeah, I mean it's a long time, isn't it? I thought that because it's exactly the 28th of February, saying 2021 to 2025. That is a long time, isn't it? And it's you've gone from being in charge of it.
Yeah, the reason for that was obviously we're going through COVID in the acquisition, so nobody knew what was going to happen at that point. So I think there was a security on both sides, and meeting certain things and stuff that I've been involved with has certainly not had that period involved. But I think it was just but I suppose when you ask the question of what have I learned from it, that's one thing that I think just having that. It's not to say that I wouldn't have still stayed for 4 years. It was just having that ability to understand what your options are, and security both sides there, and flexibility both sides. So yeah, it's so those are the bits that I've probably learned in that process.
Yeah, and again, you don't have to go to specifics about the money in itself, but like what is that feeling? You see a lot of people reference when they get a sale or whatever, that it's like it's real anticlimax on it. But like, how was it for you?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's not like winning the lottery. Like I said, it wasn't. Because it was Stephen and Richard's business originally. I was very fortunate to them, in which they made me a strong shareholder at the literally minutes before it completed, so that I was part of that, and I'll always be eternally grateful for that. But the position was not. It wasn't necessarily going to be life changing, but it helps. It clears mortgages. It puts your kids through independent school, that sort of thing. So it's nice. Don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna say that it's not been very, very welcome, but it is an anticlimax. I think you literally get to the point where you've gone all of this work, all of this I can never say the word due diligence process. You've worked your ass off for months to get to this point, and then there's this sort of there's not a fanfare. And we were unfortunate that actually we did it a whole process through lockdowns. Okay, so we never met face to face. We went through a whole business sale having never met. And I think from that perspective, that was quite unique in that sense. I think it probably would be a little bit more fanfare-ish. Let's go out for a meal, let's do this, but we couldn't do any of it because we were all in lockdowns. So yeah, I think perhaps it was certainly I don't think we were all expecting the fanfare parade and the ticker tapes and all of that to go up, but I don't think that. I think that'll be an interesting question to ask Stephen and Richard, whose sort of position probably did change more than mine, but still, I think they would say the same. I don't think it. I think if you were selling a business for 2 billion, that might be a bit different.
Or maybe not. Who knows?
No, well,
Yeah.
there's a guy that sold is it HomeServe, or he's very active on social media. Yes, yeah, that's him.
Richard Harpin. Yeah, I'd not heard of
Um,
him, and then I just saw this book. I got it last at the weekend.
yeah,
Fascinating.
it's only just come out, hasn't it? But I follow him on LinkedIn, and yeah, sort of seeing his story and seeing what he speaks about, and you think he would be a fine person to answer that question. And I
Yeah,
think he sold his business for something like 4.1 billion
yeah,
pounds. And he's still working, and he's still linked in, and he's hey ho, I don't think I would be doing that. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, no, it's a good experience to go through. I think you learn a lot. I think it's a good period for the self-reflection piece that we've already spoken about. I
yeah,
think you do take a lot out of that experience, and again, going through the public listing was a different experience entirely. Actually, dealing with it after was again a very different experience, and how you run a business in a publicly listed environment to a private equity environment is very different. So yeah, a lot of learning in that period, definitely, and again, it's all sort of taking me on to the next step, and what sort of things I want to get involved with and what impact I want to make. So yeah.
that's really good. And then finally, that we've mentioned a couple of people like Daniel Priestley and Kaizen and Richard Harpin and stuff. So, who else? Who else on the public domain do you like learning from, reading books? I always like to get a few tips on these things.
Yeah. In fairness, I'm not a massive reader. I think over the years I've read enough med legal reports and various other case management reports and written my fair share of reports not to need to do reading recreationally. I'm a big fan of podcasts. I do when I'm in the car, or even on various school trips or whatever. I will put on a podcast. So I think um, like the Diary of the CEO is probably my go-to, just because of the people, the high performance podcast, because I can't remember who does that one. What his name? He used to be the Jake Humphreys. But they tend to be fairly common ones. The long form ones I like are the ones that are in the US, that examine the companies in like 4 or 5 hour podcasts. Can't remember the name of that one. It's quite a short one. They're quite good. If you really have a long journey ahead, if I'm going to Newcastle or something like that, then I'll put one of those on for 3 or 4 hours, and listen to ambiently as I'm going. But they are majority business based podcasts. But yeah, I've got I can't profess to being a massive reader. But I'm a big fan of Blinkist as well. Sort of getting the short snippets of books and 15 minutes of the core bits on a particular area. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's podcasts for me.
I did have Blinkist, and then ChatGPT does such an incredible
Yeah,
job with it now. I
yeah,
got rid of it because it's just like, give me it in less words, or
yeah.
it's amazing, really, like how that works a bit. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So I wouldn't normally give constraints when I ask this question, but for you, I'm going to. So, like, what would your advice be for? I think for, if we say, for current physio business owners or people in healthcare, from an innovation perspective, I think you're really uniquely placed with your experience and your insight in terms of what you've done. So, what would your suggestion to them be?
I think it's probably about being. I'm going to say AI enabled. I don't think that. I think I'm a strong believer that physios won't, not in the next few years, get replaced by AI entirely. But I think you stand the potential as a physio being replaced by another physio that uses it. And whether that's helping you operationally, I don't think it's there yet clinically. I don't think it's long. With ChatGPT 5 coming in probably weeks, it'd be really interesting to see how clinically robust these things are. But I don't think that's the best use for it. But using AI to improve your operations and like Heidi, for example, that you've got at the minute with note taking and its efficiency, all those sort of tools that just could improve your output as a clinician to give you the time. It depends whether your audience is the individual or the individual practitioner or a much bigger group. But and I think my advice would be different to each of them. But you, as an individual clinician's perspective, using the tools that are really coming through the industry at the minute. Heidi's one, or there's many others. I won't play that card. But there are other AI scribes out there that you can choose. But with Heidi and all of those sort of things, it can just improve your ability to not have to deal with the day-to-day shit of admin. As clinicians, we normally are there to want to help people and give the hands-on approach and give you a full 30 minutes. And if you've got a tool there that's capturing all of that information in the background that can make that life easier, give you 2 hours back of your day because you're not writing notes, that can only be a good thing. So it's not about leading everything that we're going to be replaced by robots this anytime soon, not unless Elon Musk has his say. But we're in a position that I think, as many people, and I don't think this is just relevant to the physio industry. If you're not using some of the benefits that AI can bring, you will be replaced by someone in your industry that is. So I think that's just about being particularly switched on to what could be out there that could help you operationally and using the best bits of it.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think it's a really interesting time, and I think there is massive opportunity. And I don't think you need to be that innovative, whatever you define that as. Innovation can be defined in so many different ways. But I think there's little things like you said about that little 1% bits that you can just improve in terms of what you're doing to make a massive impact.
Yeah.
And there is huge opportunity in the space.
Yeah, and I think I've always been a firm believer of capturing as much feedback as I could, regardless of where it's coming from, whether it's coming from the patient, whether it's coming from referring customers. If you take referring party instructions, whether it's your staff, whoever it is, just capture as much feedback as an organisation or a business owner that you can. And there's a difference between capturing feedback and doing stuff with it. People will capture feedback. They'll have 200 reviews on Facebook, on Google, for example. But do they do anything with it? Are they learning from it? Are they improving from it? And that for me, again, is the more you can get your feedback in your of the patient experience or the referring party experience. It could be that you've got a fantastic patient experience, but you're not getting any referrals in because your admin support is shit. And you're not going to get that from a direct patient because they have no interaction with it. Again, it depends how your business is set up and what sort of work it does. But the businesses that I'm involved with, for example, have quite a mix of private self-pay generating customers, referring party customers, insurance and PMI. So they've got various different routes. So it's making sure that your route to access is efficient for those as possible, and the only way you're going to capture that is getting feedback from
them. Yeah, and I think it's a really good point. It is easy to get the different metrics and get it all. And it's like, right now, what are you going to do with it? So
people are genuinely scared of feedback as well. They don't genuinely like. I can remember going into a business there. We need to capture feedback. And like, we don't want to capture feedback. I was like, really? He was like, well, because we don't want to know what we're doing wrong. Like, all right, okay, I might struggle here. I was like, okay, but I can tell you that you're not nowhere near as bad as you think you are. Because you just deal with the 3 complaints that you've had in the year, not the other 250,000 patients you've dealt with. Who knows? But it is, I think we tend to gravitate towards the very best and the very worst. And that's what we encode as the worst of things and the best of things. So, and when it comes to feedback, it's important to just move the dial to the positive, and comes back to my 1% gain of if you're just improving that. One of again the successes that we went on is moving NPS from sort of 63, 64 positive, so it was not a bad NPS, and we were capturing 500 feedback responses a year at that point. We went to capturing just shy of 8,000 responses a year and achieving positive 87. So the dial that you have to do and the things that you have to do to get to that, and that consistency is massive. And it's a huge team collective effort that get you to that. But it's just about making sure that everybody's aligned with that direction, and that this is why we're doing it, and everything else sort of fell in line with that. So and that's relevant to NPS, but it could be relevant for outcomes, clinical outcomes, and all of those sort of things as well.
Yeah, no, that's good advice, mate. I've made a note of that. I think that's something which we could improve on it. Yeah, but Chris, look, really appreciate it. Thank you very much for sharing. It's great to hear your story, and I knew some of those aspects, but well done with what you've done and what you're going on to do. And it's great to hear such an optimistic viewpoint on it, because that's what I feed off as well. So thank you for sharing.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for your time, Andy.
And I must say that backdrop is immaculate. I know I mentioned it before, but that really is it.
It doesn't always look like
this. Is that just for me, is it? I'll take that as a compliment.
Entirely for you, Andy. I spent probably an hour this morning clearing off all of my daughter's 11 plus papers and various other bits that were there. Now, I apart from the frame at the back, I can't say that it always looks that immaculate. But just for you, Andy.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, well, I thought at first, I'm like, is that just like one of those artificial virtual backdrops? But it's like, it's real.
No, there's a little bit of presentation involved.
Love it. Brilliant. Well done with that. Thanks, Chris. I'll speak to you soon.
Take care, Andy. Thanks.